This is the Erin Cruz Show. Politics for the people and by the people. With your host, Erin Cruz.
Hi there, everyone. Good evening, and welcome to the Erin Cruz Show, Straight Talk with Erin Cruz. Thank you for joining me. We are testing out our new system, so thank you for being patient. Make sure you give us feedback. I wanted to touch base with you a little bit about the Iran deal. We have very interesting information in. President Trump came out today and basically said, "Thank you, Pakistan." I am just shocked. I think that many people are not quite sure what to think about the kind of pat on the back that President Trump has given Pakistan after these hostages were released. I think it was yesterday. Mother and father and their children. Since then, the president has seemed to give Pakistan quite the pat on the back. Now, I'm not quite sure why that is. I've read the material, I've read the documentation behind, why Trump might be positioning himself in terms of Iran and the Iran deal and unwinding that agreement that President Obama had laid out. If only we could get our money back, right? That would be the best. That would be the business. So I don't think that we will be able to do that. However, I've looked at kind of the backstory of everything, and I'm wondering what is going on here. We see that Russia has joined with Iran to, and Turkey, as a matter of fact, to work towards some allegiance and influence Syria. I read the backstory on this information. Saudi Arabia getting involved there as well. I'm a little hesitant to kind of really look at this for what it is, other than some tweets kind of provoking the left to think a little bit. We know what his tweets do to the left. They just wrap minds, right? So I want to go ahead and I'm going to take a look here while we're online. I know this is Straight Talk with Erin, so we keep it very quick. But I wanted to read you just a little bit of the statement that Trump gave today. And I'm going to also put that exact statement in the comments so you can read it. Of course, most of those statements I pull off of Whitehouse.gov. Please make sure that you read this information for yourself. Don't just take the CNN garbage and process it and regurgitate it, okay? It's not going to work well if we all have regurgitated information, okay? So make sure you read the materials that I provide to you. Make sure you go and get facts for yourself. It's vital. So I'm going to go ahead and pull that up right now really quick. I went ahead and I've read kind of what I've read exactly what Trump said, but really, when we look at the details of his statement, he says, beginning in 1979, agents of the Iranian regime illegally seized the U.S. Embassy in Tehran and held more than 60 Americans hostage during the 444 days of the crisis. The Iranian-backed terrorist group Hezbollah twice bombed our embassy in Lebanon, once in 1983 and again in 1984. Another Iranian-supported bombing killed 241 Americans. Service members, they were in the barracks in Beirut in 1983. So when Trump has gone through and he gave his speech, hopefully you watched it, hopefully you were able to get the whole thing. If not, read it. Don't just take the excerpts. You need to hear his tone. You need to really understand what he was trying to convey. He went through the back, kind of the back room of what happened for those people who maybe weren't familiar. Also, I see that he's sent a couple of messages, to different groups. One of the messages he basically says here is the Iranian dictatorship's aggression continues to this day. The regime remains the world's leading state sponsor of terrorism and provides assistance to Al-Qaeda, the Taliban, Hezbollah, Hamas, and other terrorist networks. It develops, deploys, and proliferates missiles that threaten American troops and our allies. It harasses American ships and threatens freedom from navigation in the Arabian Gulf and in the Red Sea. It imprisons Americans on false charges. It launches cyber attacks against our critical infrastructure, financial system, and military. I think one more thing he signals is that Iran is still an issue, but he also then switches and he goes on to say that the United States is far from the only target of the Iranian dictatorship's long campaign of bloodshed. The regime violently suppresses its own citizens. It shot unarmed student protesters in the street during Green Revolution. I mean, he basically goes on to the other actions that this country's government, because the people aren't necessarily a big part of this, but he goes into kind of what their impact is in the region, what their threats have been, the maneuvers they've made, and he systematically gives signals to different people, different groups of people, as to where he's leaning with his agenda and his angle. Now, when Trump then goes down, he gives a few jabs here. He goes down and he basically says about the cash settlement. Now, this is interesting. He says the regime also received massive cash settlement of $1.7 billion from the United States, a large portion of which was physically loaded onto an airplane and flown into Iran. Just imagine the sight of those huge piles of money being hauled off by the Iranians waiting at the airport for the cash. I wonder where all that money went. Now, that whole section was a shot at the Obama administration and perhaps the leanings of prior administration officials who probably many of them are still embedded in the government and the actions they took. Wouldn't it be so great if he went after the people who allowed this atrocity to happen, to bypass Congress and give $1.7 billion to the Iranian government to essentially develop whatever it was that they want to develop with that kind of money? I think I went ahead and I think some time ago, about 6 months ago, I put together mathematical calculation, and this equates to, in their money, trillion, okay? A lot of money. This is a lot of money. This is 1.7 billion US, okay? So what we essentially handed them was a lot of money. And what they can do with that is they can buy a lot of military equipment. And what we also see is some equipment that they've bought. I think there was an article or two this last week about some of their newest acquisitions militarily, and that's a concern. Also, looking that Russia is looking to work with them is also a concern. I'm not sure if China is as much the sleeping giant as some of the other alliances that are being made. Now, I think I spoke last night about on the Queen of Politics about China, and I spoke about how China has waged their war against corruption in terms of the North Korean government. There was a lot of pressure on them to perform in the region and essentially enact sanctions against North Korea. And so they've done that, and they've systematically basically defunded North Korea. And when they've done that, North Korea is grappling. And who else comes to the rescue but good old Russia? Yeah? Another one that we saw was a little bit disconcerting, which was, I believe I spoke about the Saudis. Now, we haven't seen too much documentation on that, but I'm sure it's there and looming. So what we have is, I think, a quieting down of maybe the super, super flared up hype that we had when President Trump first came into office. We have a little bit more of a mellow approach. We backed off a little bit. We kind of came in there and we said, we're going to take action. You better settle it down. People got all up in arms. And then essentially President Trump called on the region, said, look, you need to start taking care of business. Well, that's kind of what they're doing. And as we see some of these players start acting, I'm a little hesitant. You know, the Cold War is over, but we also have to remember that just like we see the Obama administration is over, his operatives are still working within government. We see it alive and well. We see so many things being done, statues being removed, things being done that if it were, say, Republicans or independents or libertarians who were in charge, those things would not be being done. So much like the Obama administration keeps going, even though they are out of power in the higher up office, you know, it's the same over in Russia. I mean, the Cold War is over, but there's still, as we know, a lot of espionage going on. There's a lot of hacking going on, data mining, and other things. Now, do I think, if we're going to switch it over, because this investigation into President Trump is not over yet, we're still wasting tax dollars on a big nothing. Do I think that President Trump was a part of some huge scam to, you know, take Hillary out and win the election by false means? Absolutely not. Do I think he colluded with the Russians? Absolutely not. If anyone had ties to the Russians, it would have been Hillary. But that's not to say that the Russians didn't have their own interests in inflaming certain hot topics of the day. War is a big money maker, and in terms of the oil prices dropping and other things going on around the globe, conflict in the Middle East, who has the interest to make a lot of money? Russia. So I do think that we have to be cautious as it relates to all of those details. So when we look at this speech that Trump gave today, I just want to talk a little bit more and then we will wrap it up. But when we look at this speech, Trump is really, really, in my mind, trying to reach out to the people, and he's also the people of Iran, and he's also trying to reach out to the people of the United States. I'm not talking about governments. I'm talking about, even though, as I always say, politics are people. Politics, governments, they're all made of people. But what I believe Trump is trying to do is he's trying to appeal to the good hearts of Iranians here in the United States. We have many of them who fled and have come here and made lives, American citizens now, made lives for themselves, families, and loyal citizens of the United States working towards a future for their future generations. There are people that they have, families back in their home country who they would love to have here. But wouldn't it be better if their home country was built up and prosperous and peaceful and not ruled with a heavy arm, just like Syria? Syria's people are the biggest victim here of the conflict. The children, all they see is war, turmoil, and distress, terror, bombings, chemical weapons, you name it, fear, anti-American sentiment, and whatnot. So as we read what President Trump says, he says about North Korea. He says, as we have seen in North Korea, the longer we ignore a threat, the worse that threat becomes. And he's referring to the kick the can mentality. And Bush is absolutely guilty of kicking the can to Obama. Obama is absolutely guilty of kicking that can to President Trump. Okay? This is what he's referring to. The longer we ignore a threat, the worse the threat becomes. It is why we are determined that the world's leading sponsor of terrorism will not obtain nuclear weapons. And there we are talking about North Korea and also Iran. In this effort, we stand in total solidarity with the Iranian regime's longest-suffering victims, its own people. The citizens of Iran have paid a heavy price for the violence and extremism of their leaders. The Iranian people long to, and they are just longing to reclaim their country's proud history, its culture, its civilization, its cooperation with its neighbors. We hope that these new measures directed at the Iranian dictatorship will compel the governments to reevaluate its pursuit of terror at the expense of its people. Okay? And he calls for peace and stability in the region. I believe that in this unwinding of the Iran deal, he is trying to implore across the globe the need to find peace, the need to unseat that dictatorship. And he's calling on the good hearts of the people to help him do that. Because really, the only people in Syria, the only people in North Korea, the only people in Iran who can make a difference are the people there. The victims, the ones who are subjected to the kind of terror that they see every day in totalitarian type regimes, okay? And those people, they are the ones who can take their nation back from the brink of destruction. If they only see that they have the numbers, they have the ability, but they have to have the drive and the wherewithal to do it. I'm not talking about militias or you know, groups who go in and go against government necessarily, but I'm talking about the people as a whole. Okay? It's not okay to just flee. Syria has lost its most precious and valuable asset, and that's its people. There's nothing for them to do there except for experience heartache. What would be best is if neighboring nations would build them up, not just give them money. Money doesn't do anything but feed corrupt governments, but provide them assets. People who have been educated here in the United States, what I would like to see would be visiting student programs that are made for this purpose, that people who have come here to the United States benefited from the education system, skills, that they would go back home to their home countries and pressure governments and work with the people to better their nation. But the only way we can do that is if neighboring nations can gather together and find peace in some form. And I think that what President Trump is calling for is essentially that. He's taking that Iran deal and he's ripping it up, essentially. And he's saying, we're not going to let you continue on the path that you've basically given money and the ability to move forward. We're going to say, no, we're not going to be a part of the actions that you're possibly threatening the world. When totalitarian regimes and dictators have the ability to bomb, okay, with nuclear weapons, the Earth, our beautiful planet. I mean, the green freaks should be really seriously concerned with crazies having nuclear weapons. They sure as heck were crazy and going nuts over President Trump having the ability to push the button and call out a nuclear war. Has he done so? No. I believe that he's come about in almost a full year tried to come about resolution and peace with and by strength, and also through resolve, to a place where we can actually make measurable and ground worldwide and find a little bit more kind of quelling of the heat. The greenies had gone crazy about him having that power. Why aren't the greenie crazies and the other guys going, we don't want, North Korea to have nuclear weapons. We don't want Iran to have nuclear weapons. Why was Iran, of all people, death to America, given $1.7 billion, the equivalent of $1 trillion, more than $1 trillion, actually? They are silent. Okay, so I believe we're making a lot of ground. If you look back and you go to my Queen of Politics show, the Erin Cruz show, go to last night's show. Listen about healthcare reform. Okay, I'm a little hesitant with the executive order approach, but one thing I have to make very clear, and I see it in this Iran dismantling, and I see it with the healthcare reform executive order. One thing we are not getting here, okay, the piece to the puzzle that's not being talked about, okay, and I want you to really think about this. The piece of the puzzle that's not being talked about. Where was Congress during Bush? A lot of that Congress was Democrat. North Korea kicking the can. President Obama. Congress kicking the can. President Trump is done. He was called on by the American people to take certain actions to work towards repealing of Obamacare, tax reform, finding peace globally, right? Through strength, if needed, and he's working towards that. But you know who really needs to get behind this? You know who really has done not very much in the last, 1 year, 8 years? How many years of Bush? Congress. It doesn't seem to me that the promises that they have given us when we meaning as a group, Republicans voted for the House to be able to take power, enough seats for them to have control. We have control of the House. Then it was, we need control of the Senate. Then it was, we need the presidency. And then now here we have the presidency, the House and the Senate. Oh, well, we have marginal. If y'all had the education and the wherewithal, the business savvy and communication that you and follow through with the promises that you made, we would have health reform, we would have tax reform, and we would be in a much better position actually seeing actionable results monetarily and as citizens. It would be trickling down to our the food on our table is what I always say, the food on our table. It would. So Congress is where it's at, as we see. And it doesn't matter if it's the Democrats in power or the Republicans in power. Sure, they made a lot more ground. Democrats made a lot more ground when they had the House and the Senate and also then the presidency. But really, we have seen nothing but divide, pushback, and it's just atrocious. So what I want to do is I want to do what I do in my other shows, Queen of Politics and Political Core. I want to go ahead and give you the phone number to Congress, okay? Congress phone number is 202-224-3121. That's 202-224-3121. You can go to House.gov. You can go to Senate.gov. You can go to Whitehouse.gov. Look up your senator and your House representative. You can email Trump or you can contact the White House. You can write letters. There are various organizations you can go through. Heritage Foundation is a wonderful program. They have the Sentinel program where you can get involved and in your community and reach out to people and become active in what's really going on behind the scenes in legislation and with lobbyists. Do it. Get involved. You can also look up other resources on my website, erincruz.com, or you can send emails and inquiries to info@erincruz.com. So, I can't press upon you enough. Get involved. Put the pressure on Congress, because it's President Trump can only do so much. It's not okay for him to be writing executive orders time after time after time after time. And as we see yesterday, he said to the extent, basically, that the law would allow. And his hands are tied in a lot of ways, and that's a good thing. That's not a bad thing. All right? It protects us, we the people. But Congress needs to act, so we need to turn up the heat there, okay? I want to say thank you so much for joining me for Straight Talk with Erin Cruz, the Erin Cruz Show. You're wonderful. Please make sure you follow us on social media. You can go to the Erin Cruz Show, the Queen of Politics, Political Core. This is my YouTube channel. Please subscribe, share with your friends. I have a book coming out in the next month or so. It's coming out in fall, and we are in fall, so it's really exciting. It's called Revolution America. I think it will be good for almost all audiences, and provide great groundwork for communication. It's a quick read. I know you guys are all busy, especially moms, wives, it's husbands who work. So I made it a very valuable and quick read. Please look for more information on that. On my website, you can subscribe to get emails on updates, book signing, tour, all of that. So please get plugged in and connect with me too. Many of you are my friends. I've been friends with many of you online, especially on Twitter and Facebook. Connect with me. Tell me what you want to talk about. I'm hoping as the first of the year comes around that I will have a show of my own. That's what I would like to have, a show of my own where I can invite people in, and we can get more information from the specialists and not just jibber jabber. Right? We don't want the jibber jabber necessarily, but we need to hear about real people on the ground, real people in the field, real issues that matter to you too, regular people. I've had enough of the attorneys and the other people in Congress doing a bunch of nothing. We need regular people in offices nationwide making change, taking action, yes? So, thank you again for joining me. God bless you, and God bless America.
To hear more and to learn more on how you can make an impact or about the Erin Cruz Show, visit us online at erincruz.com. That's ERINCRUZ.com. Thank you for joining us, and see you at the same time and the same place next week.